Let me read to you a passage from the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 10, verses 1 to 12. It's the Gospel for Friday of the 7th week of Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, Jesus then left that place and went into the region of Judea and across the Jordan. Again, crowds of people came to him, and as was his custom, he taught them. Some Pharisees came and tested him by asking, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" "What did Moses command you?" he replied. They said, "Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and send her away." "It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law," Jesus replied. "But at the beginning of creation God made them male and female. For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate." When they were in the house again, the disciples asked Jesus about this. He answered, "Anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery." That's from Mark chapter 10, verse 1 to 2. It suggests thoughts about marriage, of course. I remember reading an article by an acquaintance of mine, a professor of philosophy in a secular university, in which he observed in passing that philosophical reflection alone will not bring a person to belief in God. By belief he meant a firm conviction of the existence of God as he is commonly understood by us. It reminded me of the position expressed by John Henry Newman, who has been beatified, of course, in his early evangelical sermons of the mid-1820s. He considered that mere philosophical reflection on, let us say, the design of the universe will not bring a person to belief in God as we know him to be. At that point, he believed that in some sense, a prior acceptance of revelation is needed if reflection on creation is to have this result. He made this point in the context of his own day when the so-called argument from design was the principal argument for theism, as expressed in, for instance, Paley's works. Newman later refined his position somewhat. In, for instance, his Grammar of Assent, he allowed that it is obvious to the natural reason that the world is ordered, and this requires an orderer. But to say that it obviously has a design is another matter. He was clearly using the term design not as meaning order, but as meaning the divine intent or purpose of the order in the world. So the later Newman distinguished between the world's order and its design, even though the word design can mean merely order. He was saying that the world has a manifest, divinely established order, but its divinely established design or purpose is not manifest. It is on the basis of the world's order that we can argue to a divine orderer, but perhaps not one that is infinite and therefore God. But God's design in ordering and guiding the world is beyond the reach of natural reason. Be all that as it may, in ultimate terms, we surely know not only the fact of order in the world, but to a point, the design of many of its components, which Newman would not deny. For instance, teeth are ordered. and their order is obviously designed by God for eating, and for other purposes too. However, Newman's point is very important. While we can see the order in things, what many things in this ordered world are designed for may not be at all clear to sinful man, and marriage is perhaps a case in point. For instance, from unassisted reason alone, it may not be at all clear that marriage is designed by God, the orderer of man and his nature, to be indissoluble. This is to say that in discerning the meaning and purpose of dimensions of his nature, so important for his happiness, man is at a great advantage if he assents to divine revelation. God has revealed many things about himself and also about his design in creating man and the world in the way he did. God has revealed that he is one, and this is a very great advance in man's knowledge of the unseen world. God is one in being. There is no other God than he, and he created and sustains all other things, be they seen or unseen. He is the ruler and Lord of all. His providence brings all things to the end that he has in mind. Precisely because there is but one Creator, we can see common patterns in all of creation. This fact may suggest, as a natural revelation, elements of God's plan or intent in structuring his creation as he did. But there is a supernatural revelation about God coming from Jesus Christ, far beyond the capacity of human reason to attain. While being one in being, God is a communion of persons, three divine persons in fact, all united in love and in their oneness of being. Now for the one alert to it, this basic feature of the divine being is embedded and reflected in various degrees in the things that he has made. Created things reflect the divine nature to a point, and most especially when it comes to the crown of the visible universe, which is man. Man, in his order and structure, shows forth God's design or intent that he, man, reflect the communion which is at the heart of God. Man's structure and nature is geared inextricably towards a communion of persons. That is the divine design of God for man as he has ordered him. Man was made not for solitude, but for love and an abiding communion. One of the most obvious teachings of the first chapter of Genesis is that there is but one God who is the creator of all, and that he made man in his own image and likeness. Chapter 1 verse 26. When it comes to the next chapter, it is very plain that man was made not to be alone, but in communion with others of his own kind. Indeed, with another of his own kind, who was made of his own substance. The inspired author presents us with a direct result of man being made male and female. A man cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. The implication of this is that God created man with a certain order, as male and female, and his design for man in giving him this order was that he cling to his wife, who is of his own kind, and that they become absolutely one. Our Lord confirms this and brings out the original divine intent with absolute clarity. Jesus replied, "At the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate." God created man in his own image and likeness. And what is God like? Christ reveals that he is a communion of divine persons. In creating man, he made him male and female. What was his intent or design here? It was that he be united to his wife and the two become one flesh. Christ gives this further emphasis. So they are no longer two but one. They are one by the natural law of their being and creation, reflecting the will of the Creator. In turn, God has used marriage to be a sign of the special relationship he intends to establish between himself and us. But that is a further matter. Here, our point is that marriage is designed to be indissoluble.